Today's episode is brought to you by the Summer Showdown champions, the San Francisco... What? Paris? What?
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, Bill Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, my man. How are you doing after our little break?
Oh, doing great. You know, I needed you need that week off, even though you know we're still playing games, we're still sitting in the same place. So you know what? The Overwatch League gets the week off. We get the week off. So story I'm sticking to
a little bit of holiday celebrations. We're actually in a bit of an area that has not had like this resurgence of the COVID stuff. Right. So we're still mostly open. Yeah, yet. And things like that. We'll see how long that lasts for, as I know like California is reclosing and things like that. So and I've been in multiple arguments with people at 7-Elevens and gas stations and things about just wearing a mask forehead. Yeah. But so yeah, we're probably doomed and primed for primed for a relapse.
Yep.
Of all the closings and everything like that. But so yeah, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight into why we had the week off. I know I had to spend a little time with my family, some of which I hadn't seen in a couple months, things like that. So thank you for understanding. And we're glad to be back, and we're glad that Overwatch League is back. And thanks to them for lining up the holiday break with breaking the action. Actually,
yeah,
they're going to do it, which I don't necessarily like the breaks.
Yeah, don't necessarily need to do it, but if you're going to do it, you might as well line it up with a holiday, which is nice. So, yeah, that was certainly good for sure. Yeah, it's just nice to break up the action a little bit too. So, before we get into it, let's get into some housekeeping. Of course, Blackwatch Report, keeping up with contenders, and Tier 2, I believe they had a guest on recently, so definitely check them out. Blackwatch Report, or some places it's Blackwatch Report, I believe, on Twitter. But if you want to keep up with Tier 2, Tier 3, all of that stuff...
Or just make fun of Thorn's inability to spell the word report.
Or just make fun of Thorn's inability to spell. Head on over to their feed, Blackwatch Report. They had Icy, the off-tank for third impact. Thank you, Shrug, for that info, that hot scoop. I'm sure I could have looked it up beforehand, but I am lazy. Okay, Death. Let's talk about what we did last week. I know you already talked a little bit about going and seeing the family and doing some 4th of July stuff. Anything else fun and exciting for you?
Just been trying to keep up with the streaming a little bit. I'm in a little bit of the whole 3 weeks of streaming I did really has got me in a tough spot where I'm like between games at the moment, and I really don't know
what Sea of Thieves made you, bro.
So I've been playing some Diablo. There was a new season started.
Diablo.
So there's a YouTube video up about that on my channel, and I've been streaming that a little bit. So if that is a game you're interested in, make sure you do check me out, twitch.tv/deathblowttv. I also hit affiliate as well. I had like all the requirements except for the concurrent viewers from when I streamed Hearthstone and Overwatch on release and things like that way back in the day. So it was a little on the easier side for me to get there. I didn't have the follower grind to do or anything like that, but nonetheless, I did hurt myself pretty bad by like not advertising my streams and like aiming for no viewers and no overlay and just using it as like a recording recording software. So a big thanks to everybody that stopped by and helped promote the stream. Blevins, I know you've been hanging out in there a lot. Really appreciate it.
That was the first sub, by the way.
First actual sub. Absolutely a true fact. So your founder's badge is in the mail.
Yep. And you can finally and truthfully, unironically say suck fubs. There's a throwback. There's a throwback.
Because it's like you and Bob are my subs now, right? You, Bob, and Clay, and the other people you gifted.
Yeah.
So it's as accurate as it'll ever be. Just use that more. You're absolutely correct.
That's a 2014 throwback right there. Actually, maybe even that was probably around 2016. I don't know. I don't know when things happen.
I think Overwatch is like 4 years old, so I don't think it was 20.
It was before Overwatch.
Oh, that's right.
Hearthstone.
That was Hearthstone.
This
oh my
is
god,
Hearthstone days.
Maybe it was 2014.
Yeah, I think it might have been. Yeah.
What a world we lived in back then.
Yeah. Times were simpler. Actually, they were much harder. Because we had to go outside.
Now time for the Blevins Bluffs to F blow.
Wow, you remembered it. You remembered the much less popular segment from the show, not Stump the Blevins.
Yeah, Stump the Blevins.
It's a classic. Got to bring that back somehow. There's no way of doing that.
I still don't read Reddit, so it can definitely
No. Stump the Blevins is just the voice line one.
The voice lines, yeah, but the Blevins Bluffs to F-ball. No. It's you making up Reddit headlines and.
We could do that. If we get 25 retweets on anything in the next week, then I'll take the time and I'll make the segment for next week's show. It's not gonna happen. Okay, so let me hold on. Wait. I have the button set up, but do I know which one's which? I think this is the one. Okay, we're gonna move on here and talk about
news.
Oh, I guessed right. WY
7 shows, by the way.
Hey, it's not as easy. It's way easier than you think it is. WYA of the Guangzhou Charge has been moved to a 2-way designation to compete in contenders while they continue to wait out visa issues that have kept them from joining the team in Korea. Death, do we know anything about WYA?
No, because he's not been able to join the team in Korea entire season after being signed. They basically just put out a statement saying they firmly believe in the players in agreement here that like being active and playing Overwatch is generally good for an Overwatch player's career. So they're just getting him into a situation where he's still under contract, he's still with the organization, and just going to be competing now in a meaningful way instead of just getting cold on the bench. So that's obviously, I think, a great move by them.
Yep.
And I think the most notable thing is I think they like disbanded their contenders team, so this might be a signal that they're coming back.
Oh, okay.
I think I like overheard some conversation in Discord about that or something. I'm not 100% sure there. We'd have to cross-check with Thorn and Kyle. And maybe Shrug and Chet can help clue us in and let me know if I gleaned the correct information from that convo or not. But yeah, hopefully that's a good sign for Tier 2. Maybe some of these orgs come back. Some of the Overwatch League teams get their Academy squad set back.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like this makes the most sense for like Tier 2 in general. Like it feels more like MLB farm systems where it's like, okay, for whatever reason, doesn't matter, you know, a lot of times they're either injured in the MLB or they're like just not performing. It's like the Tier 1 team or the professional team has faith in the player. You know, they've bought into the player. Literally, they've bought into the player. They're investing time and effort and money into the player. Don't let them just get cold on the bench. Let's use contenders in the way that I always felt like it should have been used. It's the Tier 2 scene, not because it's like the lesser scene. It's the feeder. It's the farm system. It's the place where you can stay, where professional players can stay warm, where they can cut their teeth, where up and comers can come and work through up to it. Like it goes both ways. It's not meant to be, the second or third or fifth step on your way to the Overwatch League. It is for some people, but it can also be a staying warm, a warm up, all this stuff. So I think this is a really good step, not just for the Guangzhou Charge, because it's just, I think, an objectively good decision. I think this is really great for Tier 2 Overwatch. I think, like, this is it's always seemed like there's been like a butt up of tier 1 and tier 2, and this is like, no, it's the same org. It's just different players playing at a different level and keeping in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we saw it a little bit with like Numlock. When he left the Valiant, he went back down, and but we've also seen a lot of other players, you know, retire and go elsewhere. Things like that. We've seen, you know, Tavik just kind of like disappear when he lost his Owl contract.
Right.
And, it's nice to see it potentially work in a way that is meaningful to keeping talent around. I mean, this guy, I don't believe has had any stage time in Overwatch League, right? I'm pretty sure he was a new signing for this year. So, you know, it would be a shame if he just like disappeared because, he made it into Overwatch League and then got cut. So nobody's going to give him a chance again. And yeah, this is what we envisioned it being. This is what we think it's, you know, very valuable as, and I hope to really see, like I said, all these academy teams come back. I wish the league had just made the academy teams a mandatory part of being a participant in Overwatch League. And they never would have left. And yeah, I think it's just such a valuable asset for teams, even if it's not in and of itself revenue positive, right? Like if they're not profiting off of it, I still think there's a lot of value in just building up your main team and things like that instead of just using the Boston Uprising roster as that. You can then have your own that you can control. Decide who plays on it instead of only having those 5 players.
I think all that is 100% correct. It feels more. I mean, we talked about this when Overwatch League first started, and like when Contenders first started before the Overwatch League. Like, this is what I thought it was going to be, and then it really kind of got to like, well, Contenders is partly that, but it's also like its own like self-contained thing, and then like that's where I think the headbutting or it's not really animosity, but the like, oh well, you know, you need to support tier 2 and watch tier 2 and do it. It's like, yes, if you want to do that, but like the value, like you said, Death, the value of tier 2 Overwatch is not that it is a product that people want to, that it in and of itself, it is a product that people necessarily want to watch or like want to watch in the same capacity as Overwatch League. I mean, go to any minor league baseball game, maybe not any, but most minor league baseball games. So like they're not, some of them are, but most of them aren't like filling the seats and, making a bunch of money. And like, that's not the point of a minor league baseball team. Maybe that's a flawed system in general, but it works for these organizations. So what Guangzhou Charge and some other teams have done feels much more like an organic use of tier 2. And I think starting there is better than like, okay, well, we have this other tournament and it's not Overwatch League. And like, a lot of people argue that it's similar level, but it's definitely not, right? Like some players are good enough to play in Overwatch League, obviously. It's not the same level as Overwatch League. It's not tier 1 for a reason. But people are arguing that you should watch it and love it as much as tier 1. It's like, what? Why? Like, we're not watching the NBA D League in the same way that we're watching the NBA, right? Like, and you shouldn't. That's not what it's for. This feels like a much more natural usage of Contenders, and I think that from this it will build up organically and naturally, and I think it will be better for both tier 1 and tier 2 overall. So,
agreed.
Stepping off the soapbox for a second, because we haven't really talked about it in a while. But okay,
people got sick of us making slight jokes.
The we're just not Contendies truthers, okay? And if you want to hear a bunch of Contendies truthers talking to each other about how great it is, check out Blackwatch Report on their own feed. Let's move on. It's tournament talk. All right, we enter the Summer Showdown, aka
World, whatever you
Bizarro World, Wacky Land, Clown Fiesta. I don't know what you want to call it. I'm gonna call it. I would say, what do they call bracket busters? There was so many of those in both events, really. Well, maybe not.
I do want to point out though, of all the people that submitted a bracket to the channel in the Discord, do you know whose bracket survived the longest?
Well, I know what yours was. Really?
Oh, it was me. Everybody except for me was out on the second game of the weekend, and I was out after the third game of the weekend.
Wait, did you pick Toronto over LA?
No, that was when mine broke. You're looking at the bracket as it sits there.
Oh, okay.
But the first game,
Washington. Houston versus Florida.
Houston versus Florida. I was the only one in the entire Discord that took Houston in that one, and then literally nobody took Toronto there. So so I lasted exactly until that Toronto game.
I was gonna say, did they release like stats for like the picks? Like, did anyone have even close to a perfect bracket?
I don't know that anybody had a perfect bracket. I didn't see anything about that.
I can't imagine.
No, nobody.
There's no chance.
Nobody would have got it perfect. I mean, the Asia side, nothing over the top crazy happened. Right. I think I had it correct until the final game. Yeah, so that was nothing crazy there. And honestly, if you weren't picking with your logo on your hat, you probably would have been about there as well.
Yeah. I honestly probably would have picked the flip of Guangzhou over Shanghai just to spite you.
Yeah, but the NA side was just nuts. Absolutely top to bottom. The first stage, there was one game in the knockout round that went the way you thought it would, and that's as high of a seed as possible versus as low of a seed as possible. Those should be the ones that are like chalk, but a lot of teams kind of shot themselves in the foot picking opponents, and that's why that's such a fun, dynamic, fun way to handle tournament seedings and picks. I love that we're doing that. That's one thing that I wish traditional sports would do, and it's something I've heard talked about a lot. I absolutely love that high seed picks their opponent. And looking at you, Florida, what were you thinking? You just like, as Dante said, like, it really felt like I was free farming you guys for 3 maps, so I don't know what you're doing picking me, but thanks. I really appreciate it. And then it came back to bite them. There was an easier opponent out there. I don't think Florida loses to Toronto in that, for instance, in that situation, although they were already taken, right? Valiant were the first to pick them. But yeah, it was just a ton of fun to kind of watch it play out, and shout outs to the teams that were able to get the upsets, because both of my teams were on that list. Gotta take a minute to shout them out. But I think the biggest surprise of everything, right, even beyond the champion, more surprising than Paris getting the W, making it all the way through the bracket, was, I think, for me at least, just exactly how far the Toronto Defiant went in the tournament. Yeah. And this was, I want to say it happened about 6 days after I went on a tirade about how they're the worst team in the Overwatch League.
It was very close to that.
About 6 days when it started, ended or something like that. Yeah, it was really, really surprising, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on why they were able to do that before I give mine, and what you think the outlook for Toronto is going forward after this.
It's tough. You look at a team like Toronto, and on paper, if we don't look at any of the matches they've played, you look on paper at the roster, this is a good team. There's not too many reason to think that they should be as low as they are, or as bad as they are. And it's, you look at someone like Surefour, it's like, well, he should theoretically make your team, if not meta-proof, meta-resistant. So I don't want to call it a meta thing. I feel like their performance in this tournament, like, they win against LA Valiant. I think on paper, I would pick that for sure. If we're looking at the beginning of the year, we would have picked that. I don't think we would either of us. We would have. Well, we were very low on the Valiant early on too. So even if you look at the Valiant now and we take our opinion of Toronto at the beginning of the season, which doesn't make any sense to do, but I think we would have probably still picked Toronto. And you look at Toronto versus Atlanta, I don't think that's a tough one to make, even if we're giving all of the benefits of the doubt to Toronto. And it was a close match, but it's not unlosable. So I think it's more. It's less so like it's less so like, you know, the worst team in the league suddenly made massive changes and went crazy, and more like they're finally living up to their potential. Like they won a round, they won 2 rounds, and then they got clapped by Philly, a top team. That's a mid-table team performance, right? Like they won a knockout round, and then they won a really close 5-gamer against a mid to high table team. Like that's a mid-table team performance, and I think they should be a mid-table team.
Yeah, it really felt like they lived up to a little bit of what our initial expectations were for them and what they could be. And as a fan of them, great to see. Really, really happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked a lot about how I thought Cruz coming into the team is a bit of a stabilizing force for them. He's a very solid player that I think gave them the ability to have some in-game leadership. And I think Numlocked coming in solidified that to an extent as well. He's basically going to be unflappable. I mean, listen, somebody that died to my Mercy pistol in a scrim then goes on to sign with an Overwatch League team. I mean, clearly they're not going to let little things get them down, right? So
I'm going to burn the building down.
Set the building on fire.
I'm going to set the building on fire.
Props to Numlocked for having the gumption to die to me with a Mercy pistol and then continue on to go into the semifinals.
Do you think he remembers that or has ever once thought about it?
Billion years. No, he was playing a role for a team that he was just subbing in for. I mean, he was playing off tank, and he's the main tank player, so it's not crazy off role. But I'm still me, and I still had a Mercy pistol and killed him. So you can't ever take that away from me. Okay.
True.
Now that we've brought that up, the contractually obligated one time on the podcast, we can move on. I really do want to qualify their performance by saying the first time they ran into a team's starting 6 with their best players, they lost. And I think that's telling. They're not a team that's going to likely make it back to the semifinals, but can they get some wins in the knockout rounds?
Right.
Can they have a chance and put up a fight in the quarterfinals and maybe get back to the semis again? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the case. But when they went against the Los Angeles Valiant, they had multiple people on the bench. They had Gigan instead of Dreamer, and there was somebody else I can't remember off the top of my head that was subbed in. So that was not the LA Valiant that had played in all the qualifier matches. That is not the LA Valiant team that seemed to have scrimmed as a 6 but going into the tournament. So I think that is a reasonable explanation as to why that happened. I mean, this Toronto team still, Sherford didn't play once. So I really do think they're still handcuffing themselves. I still think as long as they're going to do that and bench Sherford, I expect them to continue to be kind of disappointing us from that mid-table team. But they showed us that our initial expectations weren't far off. It's just that they're not quite able to output to match that. And hopefully that's not true. I'm still rooting for this team. I still want to see them succeed. But I'm not going to take this, we lost 4 of the 6 starters for the LA, or we beat 4 of the 6 starters for the LA Valiant, and then we beat the Baby Bay version of the Toronto or the Atlanta Reign in a nail biter super, super seriously. So it's a really tough question to answer, and I don't want to take anything away from the accomplishment, because had you told me that the Valiant were gonna bench 2 of their players and play gig, and I still would have picked the LA Valiant. I expected the Atlanta Reign to be playing the gimped Baby Bay version of themselves, and I would have picked Atlanta to win had I had Toronto advancing to that game in my bracket. So it's not something where I'm trying to diminish what they accomplished, but just talk about why it happened. And I think when you really look at it and analyze things, that goes a long way. You know, there was an interesting stat I was completely unaware of that came out during the broadcast of that match. Blevins, the Atlanta Reign. I don't know how closely you watch this match, so you might not even know this stat. The Atlanta Reign have never won a match this season in which they've lost a map.
Really?
Every Atlanta Reign victory this year has been a 3-0 win.
Wow. That is outstanding.
This is a team that's 7-6. Like, that's insane. They just are
that is level. Miraculous.
They are the quintessential gatekeepers to relevancy in Overwatch League, right? Like, if you're bad, they're going to just stomp you into the ground. Yeah. If you're even passably good, you'll be able to topple them and take them down. So that to me is much more fascinating than the semifinal appearance of the Toronto Defiant.
Right.
And I really have to question and wonder what is going to happen with this team and how they're going to react going forward. Another thing to bring up here after that match, this is a tweet from Baby Bay. GG's at Toronto Defiant. This is more than likely my last tournament. Really wanted to win it all. Frowny face. So it sounds to me like Baby Bay is on his way out the door. He's got one foot out the door, ready to retire. There's been no official announcement. So it's going to be really curious to see if that is, and I think it might be, like the saving grace of the Atlanta Reign. Baby Bay is going to fall on his sword, leave the game, and level up this team tremendously, because this entire tournament was Genji based, right? Everything, it was defined by Genji, whether all the teams at the beginning of it were playing it. You know, there's a lot of talk about how, oh, this meta fits Houston perfectly and it's the right time. If not now, when is Houston going to win, and all these things. And they were the Cinderella story going into it, right? After they took out Florida, because they were on people's radar. The analysts that sat down and watched their games go, oh no, this is not the Houston of before, right? This is not them. They're playing sharp. They're playing clean. This is much different. And so people were very ready to buy into them, right? I think they were the teams that people were really looking at. But for all they've added to their roster, for all they've got on that squad now, they don't have that elite Genji player. And this isn't Tracer Season 1. This isn't a hero that you should have expected them to need and have. Right. And to be honest, they have Blase. They signed Hydration. Right now, Hydration isn't an option because he's busy playing your Orisa and your main tank role. But you know, they've got Dante, who's very flexible, and they've got Linkser, who's played it in the past. So they've got 4 players on the roster that can reasonably be expected to pick up Genji and perform decently well on it. And I think you saw Dante do that. He played a little more, you know, there's a lot made of the different styles between Sparkle and EQO in the finals and things like that, the different styles between the two of them. And I think Dante plays more that EQO style, that I'm not like my Genji's not going to be the highlight reel thing, but I'm going to stay with my team and I'm going to support them and play with them and play around, you know, our Carpe, which, and for Houston, that's Linkser when he gets to play Ash or the Widow, you know, and try to protect and, you know, do a little more things like that, right? You can, if you watch the finals, you'll know what I'm talking about, and you've seen the difference. It was a very good example of the difference in the styles of Genji play. So, you know, but this meta spoke to Genji, and maybe Atlanta didn't come to that conclusion in their scrims or whatever, but Erster was right there, right? And he didn't even come out in this game, and he is that, right? He is that, potentially at least, that Sparkle level pop off carry projectile nutbag on that particular hero. A little bit last year, right? That was one of the things. He would just pull out Genji when it was awful and just murder everybody with it, and like it was incredible. And so to not see him show up and not see him participate in this tournament that was won and defined by Genji play in the long run, it was a little bit hard to watch. And I've been saying that about Atlanta all year long, and we joked about Sideshow's tweet about what if like Addison and Erster, like that would be so crazy. That just worked out that way. And the funny clap back from Baby Bay is hysterical and we loved it.
Yes.
But it was also always right. So if Baby Bay does retire and leave the team or the organization, wherever he's going there, I know there was a lot of speculations about Valorant, and to be honest, I say this about almost every hit scan that's made the move. It might be a better fit for him, right?
Yeah.
Like a pure hit player.
He comes from CS:GO, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So
or CS.
there's at least a lot to make you think that makes sense, right? That
right.
kind of a move would make sense for him. But I really think there's a chance this levels up the Atlanta Reign tremendously.
Yeah.
By forcing them into like, okay, unless it just becomes Edison and Sharp, which is the most Atlanta Reign thing I think they could possibly do at this point. Just continue to ignore it. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what Atlanta does from here. But yeah, the 3-0 or get bodied squad is maybe about to see some changes. But
yeah,
I guess that means we should talk about the finals now, Blevins.
Well, we should probably go over the brackets at some point. We're talking about these brackets and haven't told people what they're actually. I mean, you've probably seen them already.
I kind of thought people had just seen them for the most part. If you want to read through them, go ahead.
Nah, I'm over it. The one last thing I don't want. I won't harp on it, but I will just bring up the point again. When it comes to Erster, when it comes to Surefour, like what? Why? I want to know why. I want something, even if it's like a hollow, like, oh, they're resting or they're taking time off or they're like, I want something. Like, why in the world are you holding on to Surefour or Erster and just not using them? Are they not good enough? Is it the scrims are saying that they haven't been the best option? Like, it just seems like if you're benching a top player on your team, I mean, does that ever happen in the NFL, Death, where there's a player that is a top wide receiver is benched and there's no public reason? Does that just happen? It seems like it wouldn't. Like there's some sort of injury report, or
I'm going to say no, but yeah, I think that's what you would tend to see if it was going to happen, right? You'd see like a vague injury report listing or something like that. You've seen stuff where maybe the reason wasn't publicly known at the time, but like it's usually something like they went home because their wife was having their baby, right? You know what I mean? Like it's some personal family reason, and I'm sure there's corner case examples out there. Feel free to send them to me and remind me or whatever. I don't mind. But generally speaking, no. You do get some kind of, at least whether it's accurate or not, you never know, some kind of reason given. But that could just be a function of the reporters are so much better. So why try to hide when it's a phone call away from them finding out anyways, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, no. I mean, you do have players that become like disenchanted with their team and want out. You've got your Terrell Owenses of the world that are like, those are like locker room problem diva players.
Right.
Diva, the Overwatch character
DIVA.
DIVA, not D.VA. Yeah, I mean, no, you really don't see anything like that. It's very weird.
It does seem very weird.
There's times the general consensus doesn't agree with who the better player is and the starter doesn't go out. I guess that's a thing, but I don't know. I can't imagine that's the case. And like you said, you should be meta proof when you have a player like Surefour. So, and you combine that with maybe some tweets from Surefour about like, this is why the game feels so bad to play right now. Like he had an effective HP, and it was very thoughtful. But he's still streaming. He's still playing the game. It's very hard to wrap my head around it and really make sense of what's going on with them. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm a little lost there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all goes back to transparency. There you go. Take your High Noon Podcast bingo squares. We've covered a couple of them so far. Okay, Death. Which finals do you want to talk about first?
We should probably talk about the NA side. Finish the convo about the NA side. We haven't brought up anything about Asia yet. So
yeah. Okay. So we've got Paris Eternal winning 4-3 against Philadelphia Fusion. Death, break it down.
As close can be, in a pretty high stakes situation. I mean, as high stakes as one regular season win can really be. The one thing that really bothered me about the tournament, this is more on the Guangzhou side of things, I heard them like calling themselves champions and stuff. You're not the champion of anything. This isn't what
Summer
that
Showdown.
was. This is part of why I don't like tournaments, and I try not to harp on it, but like context matters. And the context of winning the finals of these tournaments was, if I win, we get 3 wins added to our schedule, and if I lose, we get 2. So yes, context matters, and that doesn't artificially pump these up to be more than they were. These were just like extracurricular regular season games, and there's narrative, there's hype, there's checking in on who the best is, and there's all those things that are very true. And this does speak a lot to the power levels of these teams, because they weren't half-assing it, they weren't given partial anything. These were all teams that were going all in, trying their best to win here. So shout outs to the Paris Eternal. They put the league on notice that they are the team to beat right now on the NA side of things. Yes, that's over the San Francisco Shock, because they beat the San Francisco Shock 3-2. Another team that just maybe doesn't have the all-star Genji player on the roster. So yeah, they let him go, right? That was architect for them. So yeah, this was an incredibly close, incredibly fun match. So was the semifinal with San Francisco. I highly recommend everybody watch both of those matches. I think this one even went down to so it was map 7. I'm trying to remember if this was a cough map or not. Anyways, but yeah, it went as deep as possible to the very end. My recollection is like the last fight, whoever wins, it was taking the whole thing. So absolutely a treat to watch. And yeah, Paris comes out on top in large part because Sparkle is just a beast. And was able to take the whole thing home. I trying to remember the exact circumstances, and I watched the Asia side of the bracket before the show because I watched that first essentially on the weekend when it happened. It was farther removed from my mind. I probably should have just watched both finals though. But yeah, Sparkle popped off. I've been talking a lot basically since like FD God and Eggsy kind of announced their arrival in the Overwatch League early season, about how terrifying this team would be once Sparkle got here. And there's still problems on the roster. I still don't think Ben Best is a world beater main tank outside of his Reinhardt, but that said, his Orisa play looked much improved from what we've seen in the past, to the point of like incredibly passable, if not solid to good. And I think that really helped solidify all their weaknesses and just kind of give Sparkle the room he needed to pop off and get the W. It was a little bit, it felt like a one-man show watching it, but that's just because that's how Dragon Blade works as an ultimate. And the guy is really good at his hero. It probably would have been very similar if it was a Doomfist meta, except it might have been against Houston in the finals, because that's who was on that side of the bracket. And like Blase might be the only Doomfist that we've seen kind of pop off and show similar levels of domination on a hero in that role, but there's multiple heroes that Sparkle can do this on. It's not just Genji. Genji's just one of them. They're, as long as they get metas where they don't need to play Winston along with those heroes, I think that they're going to be very, very difficult to contend with, and they're at bare minimum going to give everybody a very long, drawn out, bloody fight if they're going to get a win off of Paris going forward. So we saw Sparkle pop in and maybe not have the same impact that we initially thought, but by the end of this tournament, I don't think there's too many people that still doubt the impact he's going to have. And now with Eggsy back, and but they were winning maps with Soon and Nico. Like they had strats, like their May Reaper strategies were Soon and Nico. Like they would just sub out the 2 DPS, and Philly tried to take them there on purpose to beat them, and I think they lost both of those times, right? So it was definitely a team win for Paris, but the meta gave Sparkle the opportunity to shine and show why he was so hyped up coming out of Contenders. why they were willing to have a 17-year-old that they couldn't play for half the season on the roster, just sitting around waiting for it, because he is that good. And when you combine it with their complete inability to miss on free agency signings this past offseason, between FD God, who came out of literal nowhere, and how now his Lucio was like mind-blowing when we first saw it, and then his Brig play was whatever, but even his Brig's better. Ben Best, props to the coaching staff for Paris, really shored up all their weaknesses, helped their players improve and things they needed to improve on, and we're seeing it pay off fast. And I think we've added a third powerhouse essentially. Not if you ask me to predict San Francisco versus Paris for this weekend, I'm picking San Francisco, but Paris is right there now, right? This is what they needed to do to announce that they might be one of those top three with Philly and San Fran. And I'm excited for it. It only makes things more interesting going forward. Three of those teams.
I was going to ask, is this, and obviously you don't need to go back into it as much, but is this not a splash in the water? Because I think a tournament like this and just the opponents they played against is not like a splash in the water, flash in the pan type of whatever other, figure of speech you want to say type of performance. This seems much more like a team emerging and really showing what they can do. But is Paris actually like a top tier team, or are they just like, top of the middle? Are they actually in that contention, or does it have to be a Genji meta for them to really pop off?
Again, I don't think it has to be a Genji meta, but again, I do think there's metas where they're going to have deficiencies that can be exploited. Right. So they might not be meta dependent to succeed, but they're meta dependent to fail. Right. Okay. So if they get to the point where there is that Winston, I do think no smite Ben Best combo falls short and is a massive problem for the team. But as long as Ben Best can perform like he did on the Orisa this weekend, they're okay there. They've proven his Reinhardt is just fine, and they perform very well when he gets the opportunity to play that. So maybe that's their best meta, is Reinhardt instead, with like either the Doomfist or the Genji or something Sparkle can really pop at. I don't know his full hero pool off the top of my head, but maybe that's more what it is. But regardless of the situation, the circumstance, anything, when you go through a tournament and you put down the Dallas Fuel, who did bring Decay back, right? So they were at their full strength. That's a proving ground, right? There, Dallas is not great, but
it's a placement match,
right? You've got to be able to beat them if you want to be good. And then, okay, maybe beating Vancouver doesn't say too much, but then they go in and they take down San Francisco and Philly in the full distance kind of games, right? The map 5s, the map 7s. That says they're not heads and shoulders above those teams, but that says they're right there with them. And until you do it over time, maybe over a couple metas, I'm going to side with those teams, even though you just beat them, right? I still have them a small step behind San Francisco and Philly, but they catapulted themselves over everybody else instantly, right? Because teams have struggled to get that one flash in the pan win over either of those two squads.
True.
And then now you've got somebody that did it twice, back to back against both of them. So yeah, it was definitely an announcement, a statement game. It was, we're here, we're very legitimate. They're trying to say they're an elite team, right? You're not going to say anything else.
Right.
But I do think there is that next step, right? We're going into placements again for the next tournament series cycle, and that means a hero pool. So let's show us you can do it in that hero pool. It should be fine. Genji was untouched. We'll get to that later. But not completely untouched. He's still available though as a hero. We'll say that much. And yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. They too, to me at least, have to repeat this kind of a performance next stage. Not win it all, but they need to take down one of those two teams. If they lose in the finals to the other one, whatever, or whatever happens, who knows? Or if they lose to some meta star or something like that, and whatever we end up in, so be it. But yeah, they're the first step, like the first 2 or 3 steps to me being confident in them and putting them squarely in that top tier have been completed. There's just one more to go, and it's longevity.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, you can't take anything away from a team that just beat Philly and San Francisco, but they're not necessarily quite there. Let's quickly talk about the finals of Guangzhou versus Shanghai. Obviously, we've seen this match play out a lot just because of how the Asia region works out. But Guangzhou, I mean, Guangzhou 3-0'd Hunters. Okay, not too
the
surprising.
whole bracket was 3-0s except for
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. There was two matches that weren't. Yeah,
and
Seoul London was a 3-1.
3-1 instead of a 3-0.
Right. So, what's the story here with Guangzhou? I mean, is this a level up over Shanghai, or is it just they lost the coin flip?
It's not that they lost the coin flip. It's Guangzhou is what I thought they were going into the tournament, and maybe Shanghai is a step behind what I thought. But even that, I'm not willing to say, right? Because there's not much more of an iconic duo than Shanghai and blowing it in the finals. They're a little bit known for that. I mean, even if it's not the finals, if it's a big moment, if it's a map 5, Adora leaves the point or something like that. Like going back to last year, this isn't even a year 3 problem for this team. I don't know what it is, but there was some absolute C9s in that finals, and Guangzhou just was there, and they were solid. They're playing very, very well. A lot of analysts, I think, would have us believe that they're going into at least this weekend, that they were a cut above the rest of the teams, even on the NA side of things. I've never bought into that, but to me, it's always a put up or shut up, prove it, or I'm not buying it. And that's not possible for Shanghai when you can't mix the regions like this. So, it's very tough to take anything too definitive other than the teams I absolutely expected to make it to the finals, made it to the finals, had a very close game, and Shanghai just kind of blew it, left a little bit to be desired, and that's not out of character for them. So yeah, I don't know. Props to Guangzhou. I do think it's notable that they're doing this kind of shorthanded, right? I don't think Eileen's Genji is crazy by any stretch, right? And to have him playing that role and them winning anyways. I mean, he's good. He's solid at it, right? I'm not trying to say he's bad at it, but I do think that's Nero's job when he's there and when he's able to play for the team. So I think they're kind of doing this with a hand tied behind their back, right? They've got a backup in. They're still able to close out the bracket, win the region, and that's not something that I think the org's done before. So yeah, it's a big accomplishment for them. Shanghai has to figure out their clutch problem, and I don't know that it really needs to get broken down farther than that. This was a series. It was 4-2, not 4-3, but it was very, very close. Guangzhou, I want to say, came out to a 3-0 start and then dropped a couple maps, and it got close. But they were just the better team on this day, not by a large margin, but better enough. And I think when they get their full squad back, they're only going to be a little bit stronger. So we need to reshape our expectations of the Asia region and think of it as a 2-man race with NYXL just on the outside knocking on the door, with a little cleanup work to do, maybe to get themselves on the par. They got 3-0 and beat up by Guangzhou. Too many more of those performances, and we're not even going to really be able to talk about them as knocking on the door. If I'm being honest, they're still probably a cut above the rest of the region outside those two. But the gap's widening, not closing for New York.
You only get to flex we were the best team in season 1 and season 2 at points for so long before it stops mattering at all, right?
And to me, as long as you have that qualifier of at points, it doesn't matter.
Right. Sure.
So
I mean that's certainly reasonable. And they're not doing themselves any favors, so it's getting harder and harder to defend that. But nonetheless, that was your summer showdown. Your summer showdown for Overwatch League 2020. I don't know. Do we know what the next one's going to be called? It'll probably be something dumb that they should consult me on.
We should have some say in naming these. Yeah. I want to say there was like details put out about it. I don't know. I'll find it and try to get your name.
Yeah. Well, we'll figure it out. Okay. Let's move on here to next week and start with the meta death. May, Widowmaker, Orisa, and Ana are banned.
Yeah. Widowmaker is definitely telling, but I think it mostly just confirms we're going to see a lot of Ashe, as that's likely to be very, very important. No Genji here, and that was the defining character coming off of his patch. I think as well, Hanzo got buffed in that same patch. It was really a Shimada patch instead of just a Genji patch, but Genji got the much better end of that exchange in the buffs. So maybe we do see a little more Hanzo. I know a couple teams wanted to pull it out at times in the tournament as well. Ana's gone. Nano Blades are big, but Brig was the more likely duo in the tournament. That was because of the armor pack, like overhealing would put armor on a character, and I believe that's out now. They patched that out, and that should be in there now for this weekend's matches. So I'm a little curious to see what they end up with for a support duo. I'm wondering if maybe we get back to more Zen play, because Discord Orb, when you have Overwatch League levels of coordination and focus fire, Discord Orb is a game changer, melts tanks down. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Probably still going to see a good amount of Brig. Orisa's out, so I think dive might be a little more prevalent. You don't really want to play Reinhardt against dive compositions. You get a little bit countered there. So I think we might see some Winston Ball or maybe some Winston Diva. Haven't seen a ton of Diva lately, so I don't think she's incredibly popular, but you never know the impact something like a ban like Orisa, who was the steady as she goes main tank throughout the entire tournament for everybody outside of like Gibraltar map picks. I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly how it adapts. I don't know for sure what'll happen. I did start playing a little bit more recently. I've been playing with Shrugzix, his team, a little bit when they needed somebody for some ladder games. And yeah, it's obviously the ELO difference is significant, but there also seemed to be a good amount of fluidity in what was good. Maybe we go back to Moira's needed, right? She's very resilient against dive. You can just shift to get out, and if you get targeted. So maybe we're back to, like, maybe we get some Brig Moira, maybe we get Lucio Moira with the dive. I really don't know. But I do think dive is very likely to be a prevalent staple for teams going forward into this weekend.
Yeah, it makes sense. Considering no Orisa and Widowmaker as well. Yeah, I'm interested to see what it ends up being. I mean, Genji was a huge part of the Summer Showdown, so I wonder if he's gonna. I'd be interested to see if he is making it as a like staple meta pick, or if it's just like we have a Genji specialist, so we've unlocked the ability to play Genji here. That's what I think that would be cooler, but.
I think that's what we always want. You don't want any one hero broken and teams unable to function if they don't have them.
Right.
But that's very hard to accomplish from a balancing standpoint, and not 100% sure. One thing I can tell you, and I've always been very open about how little I understand about this particular topic, the effect of armor from Brig being put on these backline heroes.
Yeah.
All I know is people don't die when they have armor, right? Like, it just seems near impossible. So with that change being in there, it could really shake things up, and maybe your Brig is just able to hard shut down the Genji now, right? Because you hit the shield slam on it, and your DPS is actually able to take them out instead of they just unstun and then dash away and they're fine again, or start deflecting and they're okay. So yeah, that to me almost more telling than the Genji patch. I think the Brig patch might be more impactful,
right?
Just because of how intricate the damage crunch numbers were with armor packs. And she'll still have rally. I mean, I don't think Brig's going to become bad. But now you're talking about once every 3 fights or once every other fight having the ability to provide armor to your team instead of, well, 3 times in a fight until the cooldown comes up and I get one of them back and then I get a 4th one. Now we're talking like 5, 6 armor packs I get to throw around on my backliners. It's a very different conversation and it's a very different level of effectiveness that the hero can have. So yeah, I would love to see it where it's not mandatory, but it's hard to imagine we'll get there in a world where it looks like we're headed more towards dive than it does something death volley.
Okay, well, with that being said about the meta prediction, let's talk about the matches that are going to be playing with that meta. Starting on Friday, we have Vancouver Titans versus Paris Eternal. We've spent the lion's share of the show talking about how good the Eternal are, and have said nothing about the Titans because, well, they're...
To be fair, 4 seed, right? They got the 4 seed.
That's true.
No matter how bad their opponents might have been leading up into it.
And that happened to Florida too, and they just also were good.
We would have just picked them to lose against no matter any opponent, no matter how bad they were going into it. So Vancouver's on the up and looking better than they did 2 weeks ago, but this is Paris we're talking about coming off the performance they had. I'm going to take a 3-0.
Yep. Ship it. Next up, we've got the...
Winston. I don't know. I'm talking about 3-1. 3-1.
Okay. We've got the battle for Texas or the Longhorn. I don't know what they call it. Houston Outlaws versus Dallas Fuel. Saw a nice little run by Houston this week, Death. Are you taking them over the Fuel here?
I've got this one incredibly close. I do think at full strength with Decay, with Doha, with everybody up, I think this is essentially a coin flip match that we're talking about. So what is the meta become? Is it specifically Genji centric? If that's the case, Doha wins this one for Dallas, hands down. Right now, is it just dive and is the Tracer the star now without the armor packs or something like that? Then it's up for grabs because Decay versus Dante is going to be a knockdown drag out. If this becomes a matter of the tank lines are super, super important, the advantage goes to Houston. Same thing really with the support line as well. Houston is, I think, coming together as a more complete team right now, but Dallas still has Decay, still has Doha. Those guys pop off and carry performances. I'm going to say 3-2 Houston, but again, even in my head, I'm like mentally flipping a coin. I'm just doing the Jedi mind trick to get the result I want because I like one of these teams. But as close can be, I can't stress that enough to the YouTube commenter that loves to hate on us whenever we pick Houston over Dallas.
Whoa. There's no we here.
No, it is. There is.
What do you got, a mouse in your pocket?
When you don't counter me, you are just as guilty as I am.
Okay. Well,
Dallas 3-2 here.
I am going to pick Dallas 3-2 here because you're mentally flipping a coin, but I'm literally flipping a coin. Okay, what do we do? The one is heads, and we'll go tails never fails for Dallas. Oh, God. Wow, that was crazy. It was heads. So Houston is going to get the win here. I want someone to clip that because I flipped it over my head. It landed on my head, it rolled down, and then landed in my hand. That was the most impressive thing I did by accident ever. Okay, moving on to Saturday, we've got Hangzhou Spark versus the Seoul Dynasty. Who do you have, Death?
I'm going to go Seoul. Hangzhou just really hasn't put it together with their new pieces. I do feel like a level up's on the way, but I'll wait until I see it before I start giving them credit for it.
Yep. It's never a bad bet to bet against Seoul, but I'm not buying it yet either, so I'll take Seoul as well.
Sign me up for Goose by Winston though. I always love seeing that.
True. Next up, Guangzhou Charge versus London Spitfire. I believe we've got our classic tier difference here.
Yeah, easy clap, Guangzhou. Give me 3-0.
Yeah. Up next, we've got Chengdu Hunters versus NYXL. You, of course, know my thoughts on this. Easy 5-0. But I think even without taking the NYXL hat off, still pretty favored for NY.
Yeah, I think I'll be taking NY as well. There is a tier gap difference between these teams. It's unlike the last match, though. It's tier 2 to tier 3 instead of tier 1 to tier 3.
Right.
So it's much closer. The Chengdu effect is always a factor. Maybe they can get back to some ball-oriented dive comps and take New York off guard. But for now, I'm going to go with the best Genji player and say that the better main tanks are also there. I think Hotba getting to maybe play Diva again could be really good for you guys. But yeah, I will go New York. Let's call it 3-1.
Okay. Going back to NA, we've got Vancouver Titans versus LA Gladiators.
Gladiators fans are so upset over the loss to Houston that they're questioning this one. But I'm here to tell you guys to calm down a little bit. You should still be able to take over a match against the Vancouver Titans. Give me the Gladiators here 3-1. Panic after you lose this one.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
No need to don't buy the emergency life vest yet. But maybe you should have them. Maybe you should have them ordered.
Don't buy your Kepster jersey yet either. Wait to see that one pan out.
True. Next up, we've got Washington Justice versus Toronto Defiant. Death. Can we glean anything from the discussion we had? Can we get a win in the regular season?
No, because Washington did like a low-key version of the same thing, but they beat teams starting 6 when they did it. They were able to take out the Gladiators in the knockout rounds. They did get bodied by the Shock. I mean, they're not completely and totally leveled up. I'm gonna pick Toronto, and I'm like very ready to be hurt. Like I'm just very ready to just be emotionally shattered by a loss to Washington here.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's a massive difference between these two teams right now. And I don't like saying that about a team I root for when comparing them to a Washington or another bottom table team, but I think that's probably still what this is. I'll go Toronto. I'll call it 3-2. They both had a bit of a run in the the tournament there, but until I see Surefour, I'm not going to be confident in Toronto.
Yeah. I agree 100%. All right, San Francisco Shock versus the Boston Uprising. I feel like that answers itself just by saying it, but Death, is there any chance for Boston here?
5-0 for San Francisco.
Yep.
Absolutely not.
Easy. All right.
Winston means losing.
Yep. LA Valiant versus Atlanta Reign. Perhaps with Erster?
Man. Because now you have to ask yourself, now that we know, you can't pick Atlanta 3-1. You can't do it. So you've got to be 3-0 levels of confident that they're going to win.
Right.
Or they're going to lose.
Yeah.
I'm not confident either team's going to get their starting 6 correct in my mind. So
right.
that makes it super hard to pick. I don't know that I've struggled with a pick more ever this season than I am with this one. I don't know. I don't think Baby Bay puts that tweet out if he's planning on sticking around.
Right.
Give me Atlanta here 3-1. He was the 3-0 curse.
Nope.
I'm going deeper.
I'm going 3-0 Atlanta. It's gonna happen. Death, talk to us about Paris Eternal versus Toronto Defiant.
No, thank you. Paris 3-0.
Yeah. Atlanta Reign versus the Florida Mayhem.
I'm going to go with Florida on this one. The ability to just be dive-centric, man, it's tough to say because I think this really does boil down in large part to the support decision here for Florida and what they're able to get away with. I think Brig is still the more likely of the two between him and her and Lucio to be viable. So I'm going to lean Florida on this one. I'm going to take them. We'll go 3-1. And I'm going to move us along here as well so that he doesn't have to edit. Blevins had to step away real fast. But the last matchup is the Boston Uprising versus the LA Valiant. I mentioned it when we talked about Boston. They were going against San Francisco, so we didn't give it a whole lot of time. I think Boston's resurgence and their ability to appear passable and play okay was a bit meta-dependent. I don't think they have almost any of the pieces that they're going to need in order to find success in this matchup. Fusions isn't going to play Winston well. Color Hex or Jerry aren't going to be able to play either Tracer or Genji passively. Like, I really think Boston is woefully ill-equipped for the meta that's coming up, and I'm both rooting for and expecting them to be head and shoulders the worst team in Overwatch League going forward. Blevins, I did out you for your bio break. I
figured
kept going so you don't have to do any editing afterwards, but we need your picks.
I wasn't gonna do editing anyway.
But if I left a 3-minute break in there, you'd have had to. But I'll be taking the Valiant here 3-0.
Okay, I like that pick.
We need your picks on Atlanta versus Florida and Boston versus Valiant.
Okay, so again, I'm sticking to and adhering to, of course this means it's going to be broken this week, the Atlanta has to 3-0. So I can't in good faith pick the 3-0 versus Florida. So I'm gonna pick a 3. I'll go a 3-1 for Florida, and for Boston versus LA Valiant. I mean, I'm not picking Boston against anyone right now, for any conceivable reason. At least, right now.
We've seen one good Tracer game from Color Hex like ever, and we've seen him try it 5 times, right?
Yeah.
So it's so hard to imagine that they're going to be able to find success in this meta game. They're very linear. They need to be on like double hit scan with Reinhardt as your main tank, and without that, they're just doomed. F's in the chat for Myunbong, who will never find success despite playing absurdly well all year.
He just has to hope that he gets picked up by another team, because the Boston Uprising are the contenders of the Overwatch League.
Overwatch League Academy.
Yeah, they are the Overwatch League Academy team. That might end up being our show title, but that is actually going to be the end of the show. Death, anything else we need to cover before we get going?
I think that's it, my man.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening again. Make sure you are heading over to discord.me/highnoonpodcast. If you haven't already, you can also head over to patreon.com/highnoonpodcast to support the show. You can find us everywhere on the internet, High Noon Podcast, at High Noon Podcast on Twitter, Spotify, iTunes, all of that good stuff. And thanks again for watching. For Deathblow, I am the Blevins, and remember, it's High Noon. How many contenders teams do you think could actually beat Boston right now?
In this meta?
Like this week.
Probably only one European team, but all of NA and Korea probably.